Hello, everyone. So glad that you have joined us today for our Rainbow Inspirations. We are so excited to be here today and to have David Hopes with us. He's joining us today, and like I said, we are honored to have him as a guest. David is a playwright, a poet, an essayist, a fiction writer, painter, actor, musician. He's also a retired English and literature professor from UNCA. And he has a long list of publications and awards for all of his creative work. On a personal note, Dr. Hopes was my reader and supervisor for my senior thesis at UNCA way back in so many years ago. David, thanks so much for joining us today and telling us a little bit about yourself.
My pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So we'll just start by asking you to tell us a bit about your background and what brought you to the mountains of Western North Carolina.
What brought me to the mountains of North Carolina was getting a job. I had finished my PhD and was looking for work, and I got offers from three colleges. One was Annapolis, the Naval Academy, which I thought that's not a good fit. One was the Iowa State, and when I went to interview, I remember getting up and watching hog futures on the TV. I thought, no, thank you. And the third was Asheville. So I sort of ended up here by the luck of that draw. That was 1983 when I came here. Been here since.
Great. And I assume a job kept you here.
Well, yes. Jobs are available at other places. I think for a while, inertia kept me here. And then just sort of feeling at home. I had, things I did here, people I did things with here. I knew I began to get comfortable. It took me a rather long time to get comfortable here. And I don't have any explanation for that. But once I was, it was okay. And now that I'm retired and can go anywhere, here I am.
Great. What has kept you here post-retirement?
This is where I live. This is where I know people. I'm involved in the theater here. I've got groups I perform with. I have a nice house. I like the weather. I sort of want to say it's become home in the 38 years I've lived here. So it's cool.
Good. Well, we're glad you're here for sure. I listed in the introduction all the things that you are, all the titles that you wear and characteristics of yourself. I'll name a few: playwright, poet, essayist, fiction author, painter, actor, among many other things. Can you put those in any sort of order? Like if you had to choose your favorite title, which might it be?
Well, I think the title that's essential to me is poet. And that the other ones have just sprung from that in various ways. I've been a poet since I was like 15. When I was a little kid, people would ask me what I wanted to be, and I would say an artist. And I wasn't sure that I knew exactly what that was, but I knew I was going to be that. And so the first kind of artist that it occurred to me to be was a poet. And I think that informs, to some degree, everything I do.
I love that. Yeah, walking around as a poet. And so would you say that your other creative works stem from that poetry? And then can you describe that process a little bit? How does that happen?
Let me think for a second how to answer that honestly. I would think that material in the world announces itself to be commented on by the artist. Either something sticks in your head or some issue comes up that you want to discuss, and you wait patiently until a rhythm develops. And that rhythm will eventually tell you whether this is going to be a novel, this is going to be a play, or whether it's something completely different and it's something you need to paint. Now, the impulse of writing and painting is completely different. So in some ways, that's a disconnect. But I describe it as being rhythmic, and I don't know that that's helpful to people. But the subject matter dwells in you, and to figure out a way to address it. And when you figure out the way to address it, that also gives you the genre.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be a short story.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. where do you find inspiration? Like if you felt things were kind of blank and dull, where would you go to sort of force inspiration?
Well, there's a couple of answers to that, and it's different at different times of life. When I decided I wanted to be a playwright, my first play just came gushing out. It was an adaptation of the Ruth and Naomi story in the Bible. And I wanted to write plays, but I didn't have any subject matter. So I went and got an encyclopedia. You still had encyclopedias that were books at that point. And I went through it and read articles that were interesting me. And I have at least 3 plays that are just springing from that. So simple curiosity can do it. Now I don't do that anymore. It's more organic. There are things that I want to write about. I think that I'm the sort of writer who is not impatient if he's not writing, because he figures that the subject matter is forming somewhere, ready to announce itself. So I go for inspiration. Another thing I do is change venue. I like to go to cafes and stuff. It's been a while since I could do that, and write a little, because what I write always surprises me. I'll sit with the pen in my. I usually write on computer, but I'll be sitting there with a pen in my hand, and suddenly there'll be a new chapter or a poem or something. And I think it's just a change of venue. It's surprising how many plays I have that have a scene in a cafe because I'm so often in a cafe. When that scene comes to me. So the world is all the time announcing subject matter. You just have to decide which one you want. You pick and choose. It's like going to a supermarket.
Yeah. So where would you say, during this past year and a half with the pandemic and cafes being closed, where have you found inspiration during this time?
One of the opportunities I've taken, retirement and COVID for me happened at the same time. So I had all these imperfect or half-finished projects from the last 40 years. And suddenly I had time to look at them again and decide what to do with them. So I have been working on previous inspiration for a good while, saying, by my count, I brought 6 novels out of the shambles to something that, and 2 of those have been published, or accepted for publication during this time. So this particular time is take a breather, finish all the stuff that you left unfinished. The last week or so, I've been revising plays because some theaters are opening again, and it's time to get that in. You lift up a play you wrote a year ago, 2 years ago. Say, oh, that's what's wrong with it. It gives you enough. It gives you enough perspective to get back into it. So I've been going on former inspiration for a while, but I expect the new ones to appear when they need to.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. I'm glad that you have, I guess, resurfaced some of those things, resurfaced and repurposed some of those things.
And sometimes it's so easy. You realize that one little thing was wrong and you didn't get it.
Right.
Or this is a piece of trash, don't even bother with it,
Right.
Wanted something, delete.
Yeah. This time has given us a chance to revise and trash some of the things. That's great.
Absolutely.
Yeah. A recent novel of yours, The Falls of Wyoming, won the 2017 Quill Prose Award for queer fiction. What does fiction mean to you?
Now, as an academic and a former professor, I need to point out that there is such a thing as queer theory, and it is quite elaborate and quite thoroughly thought out. I want at this very moment to observe that I'm not a proponent of that. I'm not opposed to that, but I'm not. My theory of queer writing is not queer theory, capital Q. All right. So the first thing I have to say about it is when they called me and said, you won this prize for queer writing, I went back to the manuscript and said, thinking, what the hell is queer about it? And I realized what was, but it didn't altogether occur to me. My impulse as a writer, both in theater and novels, I think, is to and the distinction between queer writing and other writing. I haven't been successful at that, but I think that one stands behind a wave. I want people not to notice queer writing eventually. That it just becomes the outpouring of a human art, no different from the outpouring of any other human art. I don't think I'll live to see that, but that's really what's at the back of my mind. So my what I write almost invariably contains gay characters or queer characters, just because that's what I know. But I don't think that at any point they make much of an issue out of that. They just fall in with whom they fall in love with, and then we see what happens. So my theory of queer literature is it is a stage to be worked past. I know that people are going to get furious over that. So that's why I wanted to say that I'm not speaking on behalf of queer studies. That's a completely different perspective.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you saying that, because it seems like the Falls of Wyoming is a love story, and you focus on the love aspect of it, not on the gayness of it. That it's love between two people, and there you go, as if it was love between any two other people.
Sure.
So I see what you're saying in terms of making it mainstream, making it normal.
Yeah. Just in the theater, you had decades of coming out plays, and you want to slit your wrists, be out, start from being out. So I with literature, you haven't paid $50 and you can put it down, so it's not quite so oppressive.
Right. I know you mentioned this was in the conference that was at UNCA, and you mentioned that it wasn't apparent to you that you were a, in quotes, queer writer until it was pointed out to you.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that story and what happened there?
Well, a side story is I remember the first time I grew up in Ohio, and then moved north. And the first time I was identified as a Southern playwright, I had to sit down and think, "Whoa, my God!" But I could see that, All right, yeah, I'm a Southern playwright. I don't think of myself as any particular way. I don't get up in the morning saying, "Oh, I'm a queer man," and now I go about my business. And so when that sort of thing is pointed out to me, it is something to think about. It's something for me to contemplate. What does that mean? Am I doing my duty as a gay writer? I do think about that. Am I saying the right things? Am I saying things that need to be said, or am I retrograde in some way? So when people point out to me as a queer writer, it's foreign to me. It's like, oh, okay. It's something I don't think of about myself, and so it's informative.
Right. So going on a little bit of that, what does it mean to you to be part of the LGBTQ community here in Asheville? And how does that influence your creative work?
When I first got here, I was very much into it. I was a member of Closer and Salga, and when the newspaper wanted a comment from someone other than Ralph Sexton about gay issues, they would call me. So I was just really, I had the gay hate crime hotline in my house, and so I was very much involved in it. And as the Asheville gay scene changed, I changed along with it. The Asheville gay scene now, I hope I might be too out of it to say, is not political. It's very domestic and very social. And I think that that's actually in some ways a step forward. It's not necessarily a step forward, but in some ways it is. And so one way of answering your question is to say that as a gay man, I have had experiences in my life that contribute to writing. And those would be completely different experiences if they hadn't been, for instance, with men, or going downtown to the Cockatoo when there were 5 gay bars downtown. I don't think many people remember that, but there were. And for a while, there was nothing but that. There was one restaurant and a gay bar. And so it becomes my life experience. I don't know that I would I don't know how it would be different if I had not been gay. I think that in some ways it would be less adventurous because straight affection is less dangerous to fulfill, always has been, than gay affection. You don't have to go looking for it. You're not in any danger from it. So I think that uh, put a different slant on it.
Mm-hmm. As someone who is now retired from teaching and as an older adult, what hope can you give the LGBTQ community that is young and coming up?
It seems to me that so many victories are won. It seems to people who are still in the midst of it that so far there's so far that we need yet to go, and that's true also. But I want to mention to young people how very much different and, believe it or not, easier it is now than it was then. There's all sorts of battles, especially in the trans universe. There's all sorts of battles, but so many battles are won. One of the things I observed about my students the last maybe decade was they didn't seem to notice color, and they didn't seem to notice gender. It was all very smooth. I didn't recognize them being artificial about it. It seemed completely natural that, Jane and Mary are a couple. In my day, that would have been a 20-minute conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so. I think tremendous victories have been won, and that if gay young people are not safe today, gay and trans young people are not safe today, they are safer because some of the work has been done. Mm-hmm. So I want to say, keep up with it, but realize that the effort is not futile. Mm-hmm. Ground has been covered, and it's up to you to cover the rest of it, but it's not impossible.
Yeah. A way has been paved. It may be a little rocky, but there is a way. Yeah.
None of this is a surprise anymore.
Yeah.
There's probably nothing a queer person can do that would actually surprise the world. It may still dismay the world, but the shock of the new, I think, is off.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What about for older adults? What hope and inspiration can you give to colleagues?
I think my gay colleagues, live their life pretty much the way they want to. And I think that is a triumph, to be left alone, to putter in your garden, to have, dinner party, whatever, to be able to do that without apologizing, without worrying about consequences. I think that is a kind of reward. Mm-hmm. It's not that we have the first gay president, the second gay president, or anything like that, but most mature gay people in Asheville, North Carolina, can live the way they please.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What is your vision for the next chapter in your life? Where do you see yourself?
I'm having a really good time. And I haven't had this good a time since I was a grad student. So in my mind, I am knitting those two parts of my life together. When I was a grad student, I had nothing to do but write and hang out, really, because I had a fellowship on this. Right now, I have nothing to do but write and hang out and work in my garden. And I feel such lightness of being. Mm-hmm. So what I see for myself in coming times is the same almost manic energy that I felt as a grad student. Just write, party. I don't party so much anymore, but garden, or nap. And and it so I have not noticed any diminution of creative powers. I mean, I'm writing new stuff all the time. So as long as the tap keeps running, I'm going to keep drinking. Yeah. So, I see for myself a revival of the way I was when I was happiest, when I was, grad student, and just could do exactly what I wanted. Mm. No offense to my students, all of whom I loved.
I love that. Well, and speaking of that vision, that in and of itself can be hope for speaking to older generation people who are in their older years, going back to when they were happiest and
Yeah.
finding that fount of wisdom, whatever that is. Yeah,
Sure.
I like that. I like that. I did want to ask if you had any other things to add, any questions that I didn't ask that I should have.
Well, I was looking at questions that people were sending. I guess one of them was the one that you just asked. The wall I come up against talking about writing, and one of the reasons why I felt a little bit like a fraud when I was teaching writing, is that I don't know how it's done. People will say, how do you do? And what I want to say is, you sit down and write. And I understand how unhelpful that is to the masses, but that's where I've been coming from all my life. I've never had a dry period. I've never, been frustrated. I've been frustrated by lots of things, but never about my writing. And so it's like, in some ways, I feel this blessed exceptionalism, because I've never struggled over my writing. I've struggled over publication and stuff like that, but not over writing. And I recognize how unhelpful that was to my students who, well, Dr. Hobbs, what should I write about? And I want to say, write about, what you obsess about. There's also answers, but none of them are formulaic. And people ask about, you write on yellow paper and as though there were a list of things you do to make it happen. And I've always been perplexed by that, because I didn't know the answer. Didn't mean I didn't answer the question. I made shit up, but but I recognized that I was doing that.
Yeah. So then what is your process? I mean, do you have a yellow notebook? Do you? Well,
my process is whatever's at hand.
Okay. Napkins if you need it.
Here I have this in case something wonderful comes up. If I go to a rehearsal with one of my plays, I take a notebook. When I go to the bar, my car was broken into last night. This is actually germane to this, and I don't keep anything car, but on the front seat, open, was my journal, my writing journal. I'm wondering, did the thief come in and take a minute to look at my writing journal? And I thought that was really kind of funny, because there's a writing journal in my backpack. Right. So it's like, just be ready. And also don't be anxious. People talk about, I wish I'd written that down because now I forgot what it was. My theory is that a really good idea will never leave you. Right. That it will stick around and say, you haven't written about me yet, or you haven't painted me yet, or, so I'm going to stick around until, I think basically, inspiration, as the word implies, comes from the outside. What you do is you keep yourself open, and that reduces the amount of labor you have to do hugely. Just sit and listen, and it'll come to you. You don't have to rewrite.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, it reminds me of what I read about Mary Oliver's poetry. How she just was open and attentive and carried, a piece of paper in her knapsack with her and walked through the woods all day long.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. My first prose book was a book of nature essays called Sense of the Morning. And I had published a couple of essays in, the New Yorker and Audubon and stuff like that. And so this editor said, write us a book. And I said, okay. I didn't have a book. So I would walk through the woods hoping that something interesting would happen. And it did. I mean, I got a book out of it. So all you have to, I don't know that all you have to do, but where it begins is paying attention.
And being open. Yeah. Thank you so much, David, for joining us today. And
it's fun.
For being part of this and telling us about your story and also about inspiration. I'm hopeful that this rainbow inspiration will touch other people and help other people be inspired by you.
Cool. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone.